Hi everybody, Dan Illman here for Weekend Wrap, taking a look back at last Saturday's Grade 1 $1 million Pacific Classic at Del Mar. Going a mile and a quarter, Bob Baffert ran 1-2 in this race, just perhaps not in the order that he wanted. They break from the gate. We're going to take a look at the three big names in this race, and of course the biggest name of them all is last year's Breeders' Cup Classic winner, this year's Pegasus World Cup and Dubai World Cup winner, Arrogate. And Arrogate is on the outside, the number 8 in the familiar Juddmonte colors. And you saw that Mike Smith, leaving the gate, wanted to be a lot more aggressive with Arrogate than he was in the San Diego Handicap, where he fell far behind and just in a mystifying performance, never ran at all. He's sitting third, 3 wide, just off of the lead, while his uncoupled stablemate, the number 2 Collected, who is just in such sharp form for Bob Baffert, is in front. The horse that beat Arrogate in the San Diego, Accelerate, is the number 3, and he is in between right now. And this is pretty much the way a lot of handicappers thought the race would shake up. The pace is fair for a mile and a quarter distance. Collected is going 23-3 for the opening quarter, and he'll complete a half mile in 47 seconds. But you get the feeling just from Mike Smith's body language here on Arrogate, he's starting to push the champion along on the outside. Perhaps he just doesn't handle this Del Mar dirt course. Right now, Collected is in front and moving comfortably. The big bugaboo for Accelerate going into this race was the distance. Was he going to be able to handle a mile and a quarter? His trainer, John Sadler, sort of felt that he was more of a miler. Yes, he was able to beat Arrogate in his rematch at a distance slightly more than a mile, but right now he's under a ride, and Collected is still running smoothly, and Arrogate is still being ridden along from Smith. He's sort of running in spots, Arrogate, right now. He does have one thing in his hip pocket, and that is he really wants this mile and a quarter distance. Collected now has Accelerate off the bridle, and you see him drifting out under left-handed urging while Collected cuts the corner, and it looks like that Arrogate once again is going to be flat in the lane. But the champion eases outside of Accelerate and is going to call upon all of his class and his affinity for this distance. Collected is searching for the wire. Arrogate is now chugging at him on the far outside, but the wire is going to come for Collected just in the nick of time. He wins it by a half length, and he receives a 1:15 Buyer's speed figure. Collected returns $8 to win. The 2/8 exacta paid $9.60. The Baffert exacta of 2 and 8. What can you say about Collected? We'll talk about Arrogate, but Collected perhaps even lost in the shuffle, because the story of this race, win or lose, was could Arrogate get back to his best form? And I'm not sure if that question has been answered or not. But Collected is now 7 for 7 lifetime on fast dirt tracks. This year he has now run Buyer's speed figures of 110, 101, 104, 111, and 115. 4 races, 101, 104, 111, 115. He is doubtlessly among the leaders of the handicap division right now, and one of the big 3 in the division, with Arrogate and of course Gunrunner, who will start favored in the Woodward a little bit later during the Saratoga meeting. But what can you say about Collected? His speed really plays, and he was able to beat Arrogate at Arrogate's own game at the mile and a quarter distance. You've got to think that Collected is on his way to the Breeders' Cup Classic at Del Mar, where perhaps he has a little bit of more of an affinity for the surface than Arrogate. A gentleman on Twitter tweeted at me after the race and said, retire Arrogate, it's obvious he doesn't want to run anymore. Well, he ran a 1:14 Buyer's speed figure. Has he declined a little bit? Apparently he's declined slightly. He hasn't shown that sort of push-button, breathtaking acceleration that we're used to seeing from Arrogate, but he still is one of the top 3 handicap horses in the country. He ran a 1:14 Buyer in here, and that would be good enough to at least put him in major contention for a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic. And now this is where you trust Baffert, calling upon all of his skill to get this horse ready for the race. We won't see Arrogate in any sort of a prep. He did seem uncomfortable, though, once again, being pushed along on the backstretch, really asked for his best run, and it wasn't until about the 3/16 pole that he finally kicked it into gear. But it's worth noting, we didn't see it in the video, after the gallop out, Collected always held Arrogate at bay. Arrogate never went by Collected on the gallop out, and that's one of Arrogate's strong suits in his workouts, in his races. Boy, he's running at the end of the race, and he wants even more distance. He just seemed one-paced in here. As for Accelerate, this distance just a little bit too far, and he was in a sort of tough trip here, chasing a sharp horse. He just came apart at the quarter pole. He was beaten only about 4¼ lengths for all the money. Sadler now will reroute to the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, which is at this horse's best distance. We know he likes Del Mar by virtue of his win in the San Diego Handicap. I'm not going to hold this loss against him. You're supposed to take a shot in a $1 million race where you're going to be 3-1, and now back to the Dirt Mile for a horse like Accelerate. As for Collected, though, I wonder if he still will be lost in the shuffle as it pertains to Breeders' Cup Classic wagering, especially if Gunrunner is as advertised coming up in the Woodward at Saratoga. You know Arrogate's going to take a lot of money no matter what, and right now Collected has to be mentioned in the same breath as those two big players. A 1:15 Beyer speed figure for Collected. He broke in a little bit at the start, righted himself, took pressure from a good horse, and then held off a top horse in the stretch. Arrogate, slowly perhaps getting back to his good form, but the jury's still out as to whether this is the same horse that wowed us towards the end of last year and into the beginning of 2017. Collected a 1:15 Beyer, Arrogate a 1:14 Beyer, Accelerate a 1:10 Beyer in the Pacific Classic.